evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Mahoning Drive-In Theater, the largest single-screen drive-in in the United States. We're certainly glad you could be with us this evening, and don't forget the concession stand is open with all kinds of great things to eat and drink.
Welcome back to Mahoning Drive-In Radio. This is Mark, General Manager here at the Mahoning Drive-In Theater, and I am joined by everybody's favorite merch tent staffer, Sandy. Sandy, how are you?
Hi, I'm great. How are you, Mark?
I am dandy. I have a pizza and a bottle of Mexican Coke in my hand. The world couldn't be much better right now. So the idea behind this series of podcasts is basically just to get to know the staff a little bit better. How did they come to the Mahoning? What are their experiences with drive-ins and with films? And who are they as a person behind the person who gleefully helps you out and takes your money? So Sandy, how did you first discover the Mahoning Drive-In Theater?
I have a great group of friends, and we like to explore, go places, plan events, on the weekends. And one of our friends, Matt, he likes to research and spend time finding new things for us to travel and do. And one weekend, he was like, you know what? I found this place, and Sandy, I think you would love it. And he didn't really tell us a lot about it, except he said they're going to be showing a double feature, and it's a drive-in. And I got super excited because I'm like, I've never been to a drive-in. This will be great. So we drive down, and it was like I fell in love. That is how I felt when I sat in the car and looked over at the cute little building, which now feels like a second home. And we walked up, and there was this green goo, because the double feature, I will never forget, was going to be Aliens and Predator. So that would have been about 6 years ago, 5-6 years ago. So we show up, and I see this green goo, and I see these decorations, and literally I got tears in my eyes, and I went, these are my people. And I think that that's kind of how I've felt most of the people at the Mahoning that now work there are. We feel like we found a group of people that we're all very different, but the thing that binds us is how much we genuinely love the drive-in. So I've been coming to the drive-in ever since then. We plan sometimes one weekend a month, and it got to the point where, I'd say 2 years ago, we were coming almost every weekend, sometimes for 2 or 3 nights. And I'm about an hour away. So, it's a little bit of a hike to get there, but it just became part of our culture and part of what we do to come to the Mahoning. And that's how I got involved.
So the next question is, how did you come to work at the Mahoning? And what's funny is that just about everybody I've talked to so far doing this, we all started as people who just came to the drive-in, fell in love with the place, and were there so often that some staff member said, you want to work here?
Yep.
So what exactly is your story of how you went from loyal patron to merch tent impresario?
So I got to know you, and I talked to you pretty much every movie. I'd come in and give you something when I was buying, a candy bar or my cup of coffee in the middle. I would tell you a story about, oh, we really love that movie. So I got to know you. And then I got to know James, and I got to know Virgil. So it was really a cross between James and Virgil is how I got to actually help out, is what I'm going to call it. Because the previous year, you had a few sweatshirts that you had given away as like a test run to see, like, are sweatshirts popular? Would people want to buy a hoodie? And I had gone gaga over a pink hoodie. And in the meantime, I had gotten to know James because he liked to come up to where I volunteer at the Pocono Cinema in East Stroudsburg. So we'd become friends. And between those two diversions there, Virgil basically said, I could use someone standing there. Do you think you could do that during intermission once just to help me out? And I said, sure, I'd be happy to do that. And as the time went on, everybody realized that I do these raffles at the Pocono Cinema, and I'm actually known as the raffle lady, the raffle girl, the girl with the raffle bucket. And it's funny because I have several regulars now who are utterly confused when they see me at the Mahoning, because it took them 2 or 3 times to come up to me to buy something and then go, do I know you? Don't I know you from East Stroudsburg? Because it confused them that I was doing the exact same thing there that I was doing at the Mahoning. So the first night that I came and helped out with the sweatshirts, I had a ball. And then everybody's like, well, you know what? We should put the raffle bucket out there because Sandy does a raffle. And I'm like, sure, I'd be happy to do that. And I'll never forget Jess coming out to me and saying, we want you to come back. Do you think you could come back? And I go, well, sure, I can come back tomorrow. I don't have to. I was thinking she meant for a day. And she's like, no, we mean permanently. And James comes running out of the building. I don't know where he was. And he goes, no, we mean all the time. And I'm like, sure, I'll volunteer. And it became actually a battle because for like a week, I wouldn't sign my paperwork because I'm like, you don't need to pay me to work here. I'm happy to come out and volunteer. And I just felt extremely valued and wanted. And as the season went on, I really felt like we all kind of grew into like what we enjoyed doing and how we could find something that we're good at that we could bring to the drive-in. And that's kind of how it started last season.
We really are sort of an Avengers team at the drive-in. Everybody, as you said, everybody volunteers to do things or just shows up and says, oh, I can do this. And you love it. You love the place so much. You want to see the success so much. You love everybody who works there and the patrons so much that it's barely work most of the time, really.
Especially because now I have a whole group of people who I now know that will deliberately come park on the lot early just to be able to talk to me about the movies, about what they want to buy. Did I get another VHS nightlight in? And it became like a whole other group of people that it's not work for me to talk to them. And it's actually part of the joy of it is the group of people that I've gotten to know that are like my regulars, almost like being a waitress and having regulars in a restaurant.
It's so funny. And how would you say your experience at the Pocono Cinema crosses over with the drive-in? I mean, is it a similar role you have in both areas? I know you're predominantly merchandise, helping to devise new merch that we have at the drive-in, running the raffles, helping acquire raffle items, all that. At the Pocono Cinema, is it the same or is it a different sort of role?
Well, I was a board member for the cinema is a nonprofit. So everyone other than the people, the one manager and the people that work in an hourly basis, they get paid. Everyone else is a volunteer or on the board. Because everybody is there to make sure that the theater can stay open, people donate things. Someone will sponsor a movie. I've done that. I'm no longer on the board because I like to have my hands in a variety of things. So I'm not on the board anymore, but I do still coordinate the book club. And now I have a new film series that is designed to help students or community members feel more connected because they can have a discussion after a selected film per month. So those are primarily the two ways that I help right now during the pandemic. But I think probably most people know me the most as the raffle girl from Pocono Cinema. I would go out and buy prizes at the dollar store. It's amazing what a cup from the dollar store or a copy of a DVD that I got in the $5 bin, people get super excited to be able to say, I want to buy a ticket for $1 to be able to win this. And that was really one of my favorite things to do is I'd like to see if I could get $100 in the bucket or $200 in the bucket so that they didn't have to buy the prizes. I did the work and then I got to gift them with this little bit of money at the end of a premiere night, and all the people would enjoy it and have a great time. So I think that's where we overlap in that what I like to do is help other people have a really great time, whether I'm volunteering at the Pocono Cinema or now working at Mahoning. But I had never done merchandise before. I had never even worked in a clothing store before. So this was all new for me and a really big learning experience. I mean, I was game for it, but it was all new to think about, well, how do I display a t-shirt? How do I decide if we need something or if we're going to make a profit? The first thing that I picked out myself, which would have been the travel mugs from last year, I was so nervous that no one would buy one. And then I would be like, I'm like, I'll save money and I'll buy them if I have to and give them away because I don't want the drive-in to lose money. And we sold the whole first batch within, a month.
What were the hot sellers this last season? I know there were certain products that we just couldn't keep in stock.
Well, always the t-shirt, of course. The t-shirt is the, standard item. Everyone wants a new t-shirt every year. So that goes without saying. The VHS nightlight was a super hot item. That was my high-end $25 item. And it's so unique. I definitely predicted that will be another hot item this year. We also had the travel mugs and regular ceramic coffee mugs. Those were really good sellers. And the mask, interestingly enough. Everyone wanted to be able to rep the Mahoning, even when they weren't at the Mahoning, by wearing a mask. So I thought that was pretty exciting. I couldn't get over that there were some nights where I'd have someone come up and buy literally one of everything.
It speaks to the love people have for our organization, but also the quality of the merchandise. It's Chris at Spiral Rewind designed and manufactured a lot of the new merch items we had this year. And the folks at the LVAC do our apparel, I believe. And it's quality stuff. Like I still have shirts from the first seasons that I still wear all the time that have held up. So this has become an infomercial for the Mahoning Drive-In Theater merch tent.
Merchandise. So yeah, and I think that kind of ties into the idea that, at first it was one t-shirt. And I can remember coming for years where there'd be like a black t-shirt and maybe a red t-shirt laying on a table somewhere. And inevitably there would not be my size, but there would be some t-shirt. Now we're at the stage where I'll have a line the first couple of weeks that we're open, where people will want to get the new t-shirt for the year. And hoodies, we ordered hoodies like in huge quantities at least 3 times this past season because everyone wanted a hoodie, especially on those first few cold nights that we weren't predicting that we were going to get. I could sell an entire box of hoodies in that evening, and they're great. They're nice material, well made. And again, you're right, we sound like an infomercial, but it shows that it's not just the product is great, but it's also the love of the Mahoning that people want to wear it. When I Zoom with my friends now and somebody will come on and be like, hey, and they're wearing their Mahoning t-shirt, like it makes me happy and I almost cry because it's like they love it even in the middle of winter, or maybe more so because that's the one connection they have to the Mahoning in the middle of the winter.
And we're hoping that through this Patreon endeavor and this podcast, it's a way for people to stay in touch with us and to feel like you're still a part of that community and event mindset, even when we can't be open. So let's reach back into the Sandy history a little bit. Now, a lot of people who come to the Mahoning are just super fans of films, cinemaniacs, if you will. Some are people who are just going for a night out. Where do you fall on the film-loving spectrum?
I named my new basement that I put in a movie room in my basement, and I call it the File Room, Phile. So I would definitely say I call myself a cinephile. I have a lot of interest in film. I write about film for a living. So I like to talk about women in film especially. So that bridges all kinds of film. So I don't really have one genre that I'm particularly in love. Like some people are only sci-fi people, or they're only, one kind of film lover. I like a lot of films, even bad films. One of my favorite hashtags to put on Facebook is hashtag Sandy loves bad movies, because I think that there can be a lot of joy in a bad movie.
To me, it just needs to be entertaining, whether you're laughing with it or at it. And films that are considered bad by people often do what I ask most a movie for me to do, and that's show me something I've never seen before. Would you say what would be your favorite film or amongst the movies that you keep going back to again and again over the course of your life?
Well, I like to think that I have a lot of different types of favorite films. There's the comfort food film that I would say Speed is absolutely my favorite comfort food. It is, I think, the perfect popcorn movie. You don't have to think too hard. The characters are really likable. There's action, romance, drama, everything in one movie, and very likable actors. Keanu Reeves is probably my favorite. So I'd say that's my comfort food favorite. But I also have childhood favorites like The Cutting Edge. I just rewatched that the other night. I think that film has a lot of great moments and one-liners. As a girl, I would say Bridget Jones's Diary is probably, one of my most watched films. Pretty much once a year, I have to watch Bridget Jones. But I have a family favorite film. And it's funny when I say like the kinds of films that my family would love, it's Jaws. Because it could be on TV in the middle of winter. And my mother would call me up on the phone and say, Sandy, Jaws is on. They just got to the part. And I'd be like, what channel? Let me find it. And it's like, over time, that movie has become more than just a movie for my family. It's not that it's not a good movie, because I do think there's a lot to love in Jaws. But there's so much there that makes you have memories of people and moments in time.
Now, where would you say your love of film started? Was it a person, an event? Where did it begin? Because I think most of us who are film fans can trace it back to a parent taking us to the theater or a grandparent introducing us to something. I mean, can you sort of pinpoint where it began for you?
Two memories. One memory would be my mom. As I've already just told a story where it would be my mom calling me on the phone. My mom would love to have the TV on all day. I mean, of course, they say that's bad parenting now, but my mom would just turn on the TV and we would have everything from the 4:00 movie to Match Game in the afternoon, all kinds of good stuff that I can remember distinctly watching over and over again as a kid. So I would say that my love of the idea of TV and film started before I even went to the movies. Like, I would watch movies like Rosemary's Baby. I was probably like 8 or 9. And I remember absolutely loving Rosemary's Baby. Or the fact that Trilogy of Terror is still probably the movie that it's a series of 3 movies. Like, the one with the doll still creeps me out to this day. And I have a vivid memory of watching that with my mother. So I would say it's the moment of time of being a child and loving movies, and my mom, or going to the video store. And I literally would go through every single video. I started at the top of the horror section and I would go to every box, and I didn't care what it was. I just picked it off and took that movie. And my mom would let me. And I think that was one of the things that I really now look back and respect about my mom. I Spit on Your Grave. I was probably 10. And she would cover my eyes at a part that she thought I shouldn't look at, or she would let me look at it, and then we'd have a deep conversation about consent or about sex before marriage, or some topic that most parents would probably have a hard time talking to their kid about. But my mom used film as a way to make it more comfortable and help me understand things that were happening in the world around me. So I'd say that's my 2-part answer: my mom and the idea of just, using film as a way to have a life.
I find it interesting knowing part, at least, of the answer I'm going to ask you next with that story you just told. So your mother used film to teach you about the world around you and concepts of life. What is it that you do when you're not at the Mahoning Drive-In Theater in Lehighton, Pennsylvania? I
am technically a professor of English. I'm a writer as well. I'm always busy. My friends like to say they have to plan out something with me 2 months in advance to get in the planner, the Sandy planner, because I'm always juggling. I'm writing a book right now. The pandemic has given me a little more leeway with being able to collect drafts from people, so I have a little more time there. But I'm writing a book with a colleague on sidekicks in superhero movies. And that's pretty exciting. I also like to teach teachers. So I work at East Stroudsburg University. I teach literature courses. I love horror and fantasy. I teach the short story, but my specialty is writing. So I am primarily a writing teacher who teaches, hopefully, people to love writing in a way that maybe they didn't get before, I hope. And I like to teach the course called The Teaching of Writing to future educators to help them, feel like they have more tools in the toolbox, I like to say, on how to teach. So that's what I do when I'm not at Mahoning.
What do you do for fun when you're not at the Mahoning Drive-In Theater in Lehighton, Pennsylvania, or watching movies at the Mahoning Drive-In Theater in Lehighton, Pennsylvania?
There's not a lot of time for that anymore, balancing all of that. But I would say I love to read. I wished I had more time. I do run a book club at the Pocono Cinema, so that affords me the opportunity that every couple of months I get to talk about a book and maybe a book and a film. I do love just hanging out with my cat. So I can have my moments where I'm super social, as you would probably peg me that I'm very social. But I also have times where I'm an only child, so I'm kind of cool with just hanging out at my house, watching reruns on TV and reading a book. So I'm easy to please.
You've been a patron of the Mahoning Drive-In Theater and now an employee for a year.
Yeah.
This last 2020 was your first season there. Do you
Yes.
have any memories that stand out to you of shows you attended or shows you worked or weird parapsychological or meteorological phenomenon that occurred on the lot? We all have Mahoning stories, and I'm just curious if I ask this question, if anything just sort of springs to mind.
I would say my favorite event that I was never pegging would be my favorite event was the Bigfoot weekend. That weekend, like, we went for the experience to see all of you, to eat pizza. Remember when we had the pizza in the oven?
Pizza will return one day, I promise.
But I love the pizza, and like, that's why we went. And I'm like, I like Bigfoot, that's cool. And we love those movies, even the really, really schlocky ones, like that would be at like 3 a.m. Like, that weekend was probably one of my very favorite. We laughed so hard, or we got like, shh, we got to hear what's going to happen. Like, it was just a really wonderful weekend. That was an unexpected weekend. I'm also a really big fan of all of the regular shows, like Weekend of Terror. I have to say, I really like Weekend of Terror. I like a lot of Harry's weekends for Exhumed. I definitely think Camp Blood, all of the slasher, girls running around in a bra and panties in the woods. I always get a kick out of those. So I have to say that those would probably be some of the event weekends are usually my favorite ones.
So you made it through your first season working at the Mahoning as an official staff member in 2020, a season filled with thrills, spills, and chills in so many ways in this strange year that we just experienced. We're looking forward to starting the 2021 season in April of 2021. Do you have any thoughts, any bits of wisdom, any hopes and dreams for the upcoming season you'd like to share with the listeners?
Well, knowing the inside information that I'm not going to share, I think that watching the process of how it all happens way before it's going to happen has been fascinating, because the previous year before I started work, so I guess that would have been 2019 to 20, I did a little bit of helping out, volunteering here and there, but you're in the moment, like, you see the show as it is. And then last year we experienced this big burst of energy, but I was still kind of learning as it happened, like maybe 3 weeks ahead of time. I'd be like, oh, that sounds like fun. But watching this process right now, I think that would be so fun for the fans to be able to see. Like, we want them to be surprised, so we're not going to tell them. But like, this whole process of how a show comes together, how many different people are truly involved, it's mind-blowing. How the set gets constructed, how the props happen. Even thinking about, like, from my end for merch, like, when are we going to have special event t-shirts? When are we going to have other big items that we're going to introduce? How can we build enough for a really big show to have enough merchandise? I've been having conversations with Virgil about that. And I think that, that part, I think fans would be so amazed at all the work that happens way before the first show even gets announced. So it's almost really a year-long process. And I don't think I ever would have dreamed that when I said yes, I'd hold a raffle bucket, or sure, I'll sit with a celebrity and, take photos when you need me to. Like, from that moment to now, I don't know that I would have ever thought that. So I guess if I had one thing about this upcoming year, it's that, fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy ride. It's going to be exciting, and people are really going to enjoy, I think, the variety and the planning that went into the different types of shows that we're going to have. That it isn't just Friday and Saturday. It's going to be all kinds of new things.
Well, our time is just about up for this episode. I want to thank you, Sandy, for spending a little extra time with me. And I hope you'll join us on the regular podcast that we'll be doing throughout the season and in the off season going forward. Become a participant in that. We'd like to thank everybody for listening, and we will see you at the drive-in.
Ladies and gentlemen, thanks again for coming out tonight to the Mahoning Drive-In Theater. We hope you'll come back and see us again real soon. The exit is on the right-hand side of the screen at the front of the field, and most importantly, have a very safe trip home. Good night, and God bless you.